Hello, Marcia Cavanaugh. Thanks so much for joining us. Well, debate was intense this week about regulating short-term rentals and for finding long-term solutions to random shootings. In politics, the Senate runoff has been quiet, and so has Bobby Jindal's telephone, as he hopes for a call from the Trump administration. We'll examine these stories tonight, as well as perspectives from a heroin addict. And our Future Watch segment looks at a home built for women by women. In the house for us are tonight's Informed Sources. Errol Aboard, producer of Informed Sources. Mike Pearlstein, investigative reporter, WWL-TV Channel 4. Don Ostrom, Channel 12's Future Watch reporter. And Stephanie Grace, columnist, The New Orleans Advocate. We're going to go over to Mike first, and unfortunately shootings sort of making the headlines for us this week in this region, one over the weekend and then one just yesterday. Let's get to the one that happened on Bourbon Street, the Bourbon Street shooting, where one young innocent bystander who was not even on Bourbon Street but crossing Bourbon Street was killed.
Yes, and that's obviously such a senseless tragedy, to be on Bourbon Street at a celebratory weekend and somebody completely innocent minding his own business is shot and killed in what now appears to be an argument between two people, both of whom were armed, pulled out guns, fired at one another. There was a break in the case today in which one of the two suspects has been arrested in custody in Lafayette, Louisiana, where he's apparently from. I think he was picked up at a house in Breaux Bridge, and the police are apparently close to a second arrest. This would appear to be another suspect from out of town, possibly Lafayette area. There's word that the two suspects knew one another, had a prior argument or beef that carried over when they crossed paths on Bourbon Street. But we've seen this all too many times. Bourbon Street, on a by a classic weekend, jam-packed, full of people who have been, drinking, intoxicated, always kind of the sardine shoulder to shoulder. And it seems that people are so quick to take, an argument, a slight, and turn it into violence. And if you're armed with a gun, that can turn into fatal violence. So what do we do about this? I mean, one businessman, Sidney Torres, immediately made the call for maybe we should have metal detectors right there, at different entry points onto Bourbon Street. Businesses along Bourbon Street, of course, want to have some help. This is going to impact their business. People aren't going to want to go down there at all. Well, it's going to be really interesting to see which of those ideas gains traction. I do think there's a consensus that something should be done to make Bourbon Street safer. When you have virtually police on every corner and mounted, you're supplemented by the state police, and yet people are still willing to open fire. There were video cameras in virtually every storefront, and that helped crack this particular case. So it clearly appears that people who are either intoxicated or so angry and armed are willing to pull out a gun, regardless of all of those consequences, that there are police right around the corner, that they're going to be caught on some form of video or another. Mm-hmm.
Is there any report yet on the one guy who has been caught, whether his gun was gotten legally or illegally? Yeah,
I don't think they've gotten that far. He's still waiting for to be moved, to be transferred from Lafayette to here. That should happen pretty rapidly. But I do think what you're going to see is the Sidney Torres idea is to put some kind of blockade or metal detectors or wands to keep people from bringing guns onto at least a 7-block stretch of Bourbon Street, there's some precedent for that, which is Beale Street. Quite similar to Bourbon Street in some respects. It's not part of a much larger neighborhood the way the French Quarter encompasses Bourbon, but then there is some reluctance on some of the businesses who would rather have maybe increased police presence and just more of that sort of approach, without the barricades and metal detectors that might deter people away from, let's face it, you start putting up metal detectors and, it looks more dangerous. It looks like there is a risk. Why do you need that?
And this is a state where people are allowed to carry guns with concealed permits.
And clearly do.
But then on the other hand, people are used to metal detectors. I mean, you go to a ball game, you go to a Saints game, you go to a Pelicans game. I mean, you go to see the Liberty Bell in Philadelphia, you got to go through a metal detector. So
it's a little different. You know, Bourbon Street is a
Public street.
It's a street where people come and go and meet up with people and leave and go down side streets, and they want to just sort of wander freely, bar to bar, bar hopping. It would be a headache, I think, if you are just sort of wanting to, let's go to Bourbon. You don't necessarily have a set destination like going to the Superdome to see the Saints or Smoothie King Arena to see the Pelicans. You pass through that metal detector once, you're good, and you can then enjoy yourself. But if you want to come and go and have to go get wanded and wait in a line, I mean, who knows where it begins and ends? That's going to be quite an interesting debate. I know that the police department and the city, of course, are going to have a major say in that. But look for some maybe pushback from businesses who might have some different ideas.
And we should note, though, with this incident, and police quickly pointed out, there were a lot of policemen around, and they responded immediately. They were right there.
Sure.
That still did not deter these gunmen.
It hasn't. I mean, it hasn't in some of these past shootings that we saw. Trung Le, convicted after being caught.
Well, we don't know. Their presence may have stopped a lot of shootings over the last few years. That we'll hear
But
about.
we do know that in certain cases, such as this one, the fact that police are virtually on every corner is not stopping people from pulling out guns and using them.
So, but something has to be done. We can't just throw up our hands and say, gee, it's a terrible situation, and just shrug. Something really has got to be done with this.
Right, and again, Bourbon Street is the one sort of brand name of tourism
It
New
is.
Orleans.
Billy Nungesser, the lieutenant governor in charge of tourism, is out there saying, the thugs are going to kill the economy. I mean,
It's
because of
going around the
this.
country, and then there's a fine line between, obviously you want Bourbon Street to be safe, you want people to, come here to see that attraction, but then you want them to know that they can come there and walk away safe.
But it doesn't, unfortunately, just happen on Bourbon Street. We have shootings, around the region, and there was certainly a tragic one yesterday. That is in the news, a shooting of a former NFL player, a star high school player, John Curtis high school player, who was shot in what appears to be a road rage incident, Joe McKnight, and he was killed. Newell Norman held a press conference about that today because the gunman, admittedly, was released from custody.
Right, and the gunman never left the scene. He, according to Sheriff Newell Norman, gave a complete statement, has cooperated fully. At that point, it is in the discretion of the law enforcement agency, in this case the sheriff's office, on whether to book somebody with a crime. Now, you have to have probable cause. The sheriff did point out that they are still gathering information. It's a very active investigation, and he put out a public plea for witnesses to please come forward. He indicated there was no apparent video that captured what happened. So it is a difficult situation if there weren't, let's say, a critical mass of witnesses saying that it went down in a certain way that might have led to probable cause for a crime, because clearly there were two sides of this beef. One side, Joe McKnight, is deceased, cannot give his version. However, the other side comes from the shooter, Ronald Gasser, 54-year-old man, who cooperated fully, gave a full statement, and that's what the sheriff's office has to go on right now. The sheriff also warned for people not to jump to conclusions, not to believe perhaps some of the things being put out in social media about the gunman standing over Joe McKnight. He addressed that one in particular and saying that's just patently false.
Well, casings were found in the car, in the gunman's car.
Casings were found in the gunman's car, and we've already heard through the coroner's office, Dr. Jerry Stanovich, that there were 3 gunshot wounds, and none of them indicated an angle of anybody standing over Joe McKnight.
So bottom line is we have to let this investigation unfold. That's what the sheriff is urging for.
Sort of the flip side, yes, Ronald Gasser has been released. The sheriff said he's not going anywhere, number one, and that the investigation is not nearly over. He could very well end up being booked with a crime.
And just tragically, we have a young man with a bright future ahead of him who's now dead. And we're going to have to move on to now discuss politics. But unfortunately, a very tough week again in the city with shootings, tragic shootings. Okay, we're going to go over now to politics, change topic, and go over to Stephanie. And we're just about the end of a very long political season and campaign for U.S. Senate.
Almost there. A week from tomorrow it ends. Early voting's ending. This Senate race is ending kind of the way it has gone the whole way. We're kind of limping our way through. There's not a lot of excitement or activity. No debates. There were actually 3 different television groups had tried to put debates together between the runoff candidates, John Kennedy and Foster Campbell.
And as you noted, that's just unfair to
It
we,
is.
the voter.
I think it really is. And, I know it's a common strategy now, particularly if you're a front runner, to not expose yourself to, take the risk that you might say something that could go viral. Actually, John Kennedy had a little bit of a flub in one of the primary debates that he got some bad press for. It wasn't terrible, but it can happen. And, he had agreed to one, Foster Campbell had agreed to another. There was a third where, Campbell wanted a live audience and Kennedy said no. So basically, we don't get to see the two of them together. We just get to see these TV ads that are pretty relentless right now. And just not all that informative, I have to say. John Kennedy, he has his Obama sucks, which is not really, very policy focused. I mean, he's against it. We know that. It's very much, I'm a Republican. I have Republican values. Foster Campbell, in some ways, I'm a Democrat. I have Democratic values, but on the other hand, here I am firing a gun.
Conservative is what he's saying too.
That's another one, yeah. But I mean, the one it's interesting because he talks about equal pay. He talks about some big Democratic issues, but then at the end he's firing a gun before he says, I'm Foster Campbell and I approve this message. So, he's definitely not a Democrat that way, he's saying.
Pretty big one, too.
A big one, yes. And then there are also some other ads where he's, going after each other. There are super PACs going after each other. Interestingly, Campbell was going after Kennedy for once having been pro-choice, even so he's the Democrat.
But it really would have been nice to see them live, in a debate
and
situation.
especially, after the presidential election, because it's interesting. Foster Campbell's really getting a lot of support from Democrats around the country, Hollywood, Massachusetts, places like that, where they kind of really want to support a Democrat who will. It's almost their last chance to support someone against Trump. But if you actually had a chance to ask Foster Campbell about Trump, he's not running against Trump. He's saying, I'll work with him on some things, I'll oppose him on some things, but he understands that most Louisiana voters supported him.
Are the Democrats pumping any money into his campaign?
Not the official Democrats, really, but there's kind of an informal network. And if you look at his campaign finance reports, he's done pretty well in campaign finance, better than Kennedy. And there are contributions from all over the country.
So be prepared for an ad blitz this final week, basically.
Yes.
Okay, let's talk about Bobby Jindal real quickly. There was some word that he was on the list for Department of Health and Human Services.
Sure, which is, of course, his area of expertise. You remember he became head of the Louisiana Department of Health and Hospitals at age 24. He actually was an assistant secretary in this department under George Bush. So, he was always the kind of bright young thinker on this topic of his generation. And there was word that he was on the list to possibly be considered for that job. Tom Price, another healthcare kind of wonk who's in Congress, got it. He's a doctor and he's been working on this issue for a long time too. This was almost Jindal's chance for a comeback here. I mean, he's 45. He doesn't really have a place to go in politics after having been such a rising star. And, if he had gotten into the cabinet, I think it could have been really a new lease on his political life. It could have been a factor that he was extremely critical of Donald Trump during the primaries. He called him a narcissist and an egomaniac and a carnival act.
So he had words about his hair, too.
He had words about his hair, yes.
Mitt Romney, the way he tore
On the
around,
other
he
hand,
tore
there's
Trump
Mitt
apart,
Romney.
But Mitt Romney has yet to be appointed to anything, and that they actually end up with blocks him.
It could be.
Trump loyalists also really are very angry about Romney, and I'm sure it didn't help with Jindal either.
And of course, Trump got a good line back in the day about Jindal saying, I've never even met the guy. He wasn't in any of the debates that I was in.
Yeah, right, that's true.
Yeah.
It's very rare for a president to finish his administration with the same people he started with.
That's true.
He's just turnover, so maybe Jindal can be around for the second tier.
And I have to say, especially in this case, you could see that happening.
Yeah.
All right, Steph. Then we're going to move on over now to Future Watch. Thanks, Stephanie, and to Dawn. And sort of as you described it, a crew of women now who built a house for a woman.
Our building. In this week of Giving Tuesday, where Tuesday was the day for charitable giving, I thought it would be fun to focus on a charitable organization that's doing something a little unique, and that's New Orleans area Habitat for Humanity, which since Katrina has built over 500 homes in the New Orleans area and has seen more than 160,000 volunteers come through. Now this organization is doing a women build. And there have been women build days before, and St. Bernard Project has had, moms build on Fridays, and there are all sorts of women builds, but this takes it to a whole new level. It's a house built for a woman, by women, fundraised by women. It's a complete women build, and it's what they call a blitz build. It's going to be built over a 15-day period, May 11th to June 3rd, 12 days of building. And it's a bunch of teams being put together, 15 woman teams, each raising $5,000 to build the house, and then a bunch of other volunteers who are welcome to go, all kind of tied into Mother's Day. So there's a group of motherless daughters who are forming a crew to build the house. There's a group of women architects, women in construction, alumni groups, and the idea, I have a picture to show actually, is to make it kind of carnival-like. There will be hard hat bedazzling parties and that sort of thing. And the real reason they're doing this is because nearly half of all children in New Orleans live with single mothers, and 58% of those children are living below the poverty line. So there is a real need for affordable housing for women. 35% of the renters in New Orleans are paying more than half of their income in rent. And 79% of women who report sexual assault by their landlords, which is a real problem, say those same landlords will not change their locks or fix broken locks, will not provide heat. And then what happens is these women, if they don't pay rent, they get evicted, and then they can't find new housing because they have that eviction on their record. So the real idea is to build a house for a woman who's in need, by women, and engage women in the community to do this more often. And it's a fun way to do it, and you can sign up a team, you can sign up yourself to build, you can have an alternative Mother's Day for those of us who don't really love to go to brunch somewhere. You can go build a house instead. You don't need any skills. The contractors on site will be women who can teach you what to do. So if you want more information, you can go to nolawomenbuild.org.
I think we had that picture and the website where you can go to if you want to bring that up again, Ash. There you go, nolawomenbuild.org. And has the woman been selected who's going to receive this house?
She has been selected. The site has been selected. The teams are forming, so it will happen. And that woman will have to put in her sweat equity with the organization too. So in this week of giving, or in the spirit of giving, you can make your Mother's Day plans already.
All right. That's a nice story. Good luck to them all in this endeavor. I'm going to go over to Errol now, and continuing on the housing theme a bit. Right now, we actually do have laws in the parish of Orleans regarding short-term rentals.
Yeah, it was strange. If you read the discussion among the council, they passed a 5-2 vote. It's a very complex ordinance with a lot of different parts to it, but the main part passed with a 5-2 vote. And if you listen to the comments of the people who voted for it, it was really like, well, I sort of don't like this, but we're doing it because we can enforce it better, if we make it into law. I think that's kind of a theme of it. The city claims there's like 5,000 units that are being used for short-term rentals, and that there's no way to enforce it. And that they figure that's why we need some laws, that we need something to help regulate this. And what's supposed to be novel about this, because a lot of cities are facing this, is that it's tied in with one of the host companies, Airbrim, which has promised to help and provide information. And so they're seeing this as a landmark piece of legislation in terms of dealing with this kind of problem. Council member Nadine Ramsey, whose district includes part of the French Quarter, which would be one of the more sensitive areas, issued a statement today, and she pointed out, she says, look, this is a worldwide problem, or it's a worldwide issue. She didn't say problem. And she says, well, we need to see what other cities are doing, with at the same time making sure of our needs. And I think that's the key to it, because there are some things like Uber transportation and this that you can't not do, because every other tourism city in the world is doing this. And you hear of a lot of people from New Orleans, going to Europe and saying, well, we rented this great apartment in Rome, and so everybody, in a sense, everybody's doing it. Mm-hmm. And so if you're going to be a major tourist destination, you need to allow it in some way, and you need to have a plan. And so there's variations in terms of how many rooms you can rent, whether or not you can rent your whole house, and there's limitations to how many days you can do it a year. So it's going to be something very complex to originate, but it's something that had to be dealt with.
And something key to it is that the rental organization like Airbnb has to supply that data to the city so that the city can collect taxes on it.
Right,
And there's
yeah,
also going to be
yeah.
fees which actually are going to go into paying for the agency which is going to enforce the laws. So, but like you said, it's happening. There are 5,000 units already being rented this way. So,
And that's why they need to legalize it so they can put up the mechanism to be able to help enforce it.
right. We'll see how it works. I'm going to go back on over now to Stephanie and talk a little bit more politics. And while we're going to have a real junior congressional delegation now. However, we do have some strength in there.
We do, and it's a little surprising. It's interesting. Once we get to January, we won't have anyone who was even there for Hurricane Katrina. That's how junior. Out of 8 members, Senate and Congress, we'll have 3 rookies, 3 who have only been in for 2 years, and then 2 kind of elders. And the elders are pretty junior, but they're pretty powerful. One, of course, is Steve Scalise, who was elected after Bobby Jindal left, so back in 2008, who's House Majority Whip. Cedric Richmond, who was only elected in 2010, was elected this week to be chairman of the Congressional Black Caucus.
How fun to have those two in side-by-side
Exactly.
districts.
And you know, it's interesting because they were in the legislature together and they're old friends. And it's actually probably a really good thing for Louisiana and for Congress because, you know, there's so little cooperation and even kind of, you know, friendship and familiarity between parties up there. But back in Louisiana, we have this nonpartisan legislature and people do get to know each other and they do work across party lines more. And, you know, they come out of this tradition and they really like each other. They played basketball together. If you remember when Steve Scalise had that scandal when he, you know, it was found that he had years earlier spoken to a group founded by David Duke. And, you know, once he was in the national spotlight, it was Cedric Richmond who stood up and vouched for him and said, I know him, he's not racist. So I think that bodes well, and it's a big group. It's 49 members, mostly Democrats, but a couple of Republicans. They're going to be focused on one issue that has always been a big issue for Richmond, which is criminal justice reform, incarceration reform, things like that. And, you know, that's something where there is some bipartisan energy to get some things done. I think they'll be focused a lot on voting rights because that's been a big issue. And I think they're looking at what they view as an unfriendly Justice Department coming in. One thing that's interesting is he's going to have some interesting partners, I think, outside. Voting rights, you have the president of the National Urban League, Mark Morial, former New Orleans mayor who he knows well. Mitch Landrieu is about to become head of the U.S. Conference of Mayors. So on issues affecting cities, he's going to be a big partner. So his profile is going to really rise, and I think it's a good thing.
This is Cedric Richmond you're talking about,
It is
right?
Cedric Richmond, yes.
And of course, the two of them, hopefully they'll be able to help the folks who were flooded get more relief and a more immediate
Keep
issue.
an eye on the national flood insurance has to be reauthorized next year, and they're definitely going to be working together on that.
Okay,
And you
Steph,
keep
thanks
thinking
a lot.
that's Bill Jefferson's old seat. And
Yeah.
had Jefferson not gotten involved with other things,
Yeah.
he was smart enough and shrewd enough. He could have been like a national
It's
leader in
interesting.
Congress.
Bill Jefferson wanted this position, and he never got it. He lost to Maxine Waters when he ran.
All right, let's go on over now again to Mike to wrap this up. You ran a series over the past few weeks regarding the terrible problem that we have of heroin addiction. And you actually talked to a young man who's trying to fight an addiction, and it's just not easy.
Right. The series, which ran 4 parts, The New Face of Heroin, actually generated a flood of calls and emails, people reaching out in a variety of ways. Family members of loved ones who had overdosed and died, and some active addicts, users. And one of those, a young man, 26-year-old named Clay, and his family reached out and said, I need help. I'm an addict and I'm desperate. And they basically sat down, willing to get in front of the camera, which, let me tell you, for every 10 addicts who got in touch with me, maybe one was actually willing to, you know, be identified. There's a lot of ramifications, there's a lot of stigma, a lot of ramifications for, say, you know, looking for a job and other things. But he was, as well as his family, his mother in particular, they had tried everything. They had gone to, you know, treatment centers, doctors, different programs, and found great difficulty just navigating this maze of insurance. And, you know, even though he had Medicaid, a lot of the treatments for either opiate or heroin addiction aren't covered. Some of the doctors who readily prescribe some of these antidotes, like the big one is Suboxone, take cash only and don't accept insurance. So that actually gave me a whole different perspective, because I started calling these doctors and treatment centers and went with him to several, only to basically have him be detoured, put on waiting lists. And I could not just see the frustration and capture it, but I was starting to feel it myself. Is there any, here's someone who's coming to the table and saying, please God help me, and was having just tremendous difficulty, and it was just a gripping, really emotional to go through this. The addiction is almost day to day, hour to hour. It's so gripping. It's such a tremendous illness that really, on days when he was out of it, couldn't come to the phone, kneeled over, nauseous, vomiting, and to see that firsthand was, even though I had gone pretty deep in my first, 4 parts, this was part 5. And we have vowed as a station to continue to follow not just his case, but so many others who've reached out. And then in subsequent parts, we're going to look at solutions, at least proposed solutions, and really maybe try to push this forward as the community and even the country is doing to come to grips with a
and
terrible
it's something
epidemic.
that we are going to have to come to grips with. So
Absolutely.
We'll be looking for your future reports on that. Thanks, Mike. All right, it is time now to look ahead.
Okay. If you recall, last Sunday, the Saints beat the Los Angeles Rams handily. During the week, the Pelicans beat the Los Angeles Lakers handily. Tonight, the Pelicans play the Los Angeles Clippers. If they win tonight, especially handily, we will have beaten Los Angeles 3 times in 1 week in 2 sports. That's probably some kind of record, even though I'm not sure who's keeping track of it. But in the absence of somebody, we'll claim it to be a record.
Okay, we're hoping we'll make that record. Mike.
Hey, this is going to be big for all those viewers of WWL Morning Show. The 7 to 9 o'clock hour is moving to WUPL. And on Channel 4, the CBS Morning News Show will take their place. So it's going to be interesting for everyone to, adjust to watching, the favorite morning show, which is, I know, the staple in many households, on a different station. But the introduction of a new show, CBS Morning News, which had not aired in this market.
If you want to stay with the tradition, it's just a click away.
Click away.
Yep. Okay.
I'm sticking with happy news today. Santa Claus is coming to town tomorrow. The annual downtown Christmas parade rolls from Lee Circle at 1 o'clock.
Well, welcome, Santa. Steph.
Not to blindside anybody from New Orleans, but when you show up to vote for Senate a week from tomorrow, there are a couple tax measures on the ballot. One is to pay that firefighter pension. Mitch Lander tried this once before, combined it with police. It was voted down. This one's only fire. There's also a drainage tax. That's a renewal, not a new tax.
Okay. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you all for joining us, and we will see you again next week for Informed Sources. Have a good evening.